Hello, everybody. Randy Patterson here with Boomerocity. You already know that we're huge blues fans here, and we interview blues artists every chance we get, whether they're classic, iconic blues artists like John Mayall or Walter Trout or Joe Bonamassa, and even up-and-coming people that we've recently interviewed, such as Clay Milton. One of those classics I've had the privilege of interviewing, and sadly we lost this person in just 2 months ago, December of 2022, was Kim Simmonds of Savoy Brown. Sadly, we lost him to his battle with cancer, but he went down doing what he loved, and that was playing music and recording an album for us to enjoy after he was gone. He didn't let the effects of chemo or anything else stop him from doing what he loved best. And we have the benefit of that in this new album called Blues All Around. And of course, he's gone, so I couldn't talk to him, but I did get to talk to his drummer for the last 13, 14 years by the name of Garnet Grimm. And Garnet was just so gracious with his time and talking about Kim on a personal level, as well as working on them on the last several albums, and especially this last one. It was a great heartfelt chat, and I know that if you're a Savoy Brown fan, a Kim Simmonds fan, you're going to absolutely love this interview. Please share it with your friends after you've listened to it. I'd ask you to like this, whether you're listening to it on YouTube or on your favorite podcast. Please subscribe if you don't mind, because that's the lifeblood of any kind of effort like this. And please share it with your friends, because we'd love for them to hear this wonderful interview with Garnet Grimm. And so without any further ado, here's that interview. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care. Where are you dialing in from?
I'm calling you from Syracuse, New York. I'm upstate.
Oh, okay. All right. Did you guys get hit pretty hard on the snow thing up there, or did that miss you?
No, we got hit, but we were able to deal with it. This area is pretty good with that. I mean, what I mean is, cleaning up from that. We've got the right equipment up here, so they didn't even delay school yesterday. I thought they were gonna.
Well, it's good to be prepared. That's for sure. I was snowed in here once for a week, and with no power.
Well, Kim lived about 40 minutes north of me. I mean, right on Lake Ontario. And they call it the snow belt. When that band, it just depends on which way the wind's blowing. It can be brutal up there. So
they get what they call the lake effect snow, right?
Lake effect, yeah, lake effect.
Yeah. Kind of like over in Michigan as well, and Chicago.
Yeah, Michigan will get it. Yep. Chicago, oh yeah. And Buffalo gets a lot of attention, but I actually think we get more snow than they get. So I'm not really bragging about that. I'm just saying they get all the attention.
I'm glad you guys are safe and warm up there. It's spring-like here. I hate to rub it in, but it's spring-like here today. So I can't complain at all. Aside from the Savoy Brown work, do you do a lot of other gigging, or what do you do for fun aside from that?
Yeah, interesting you bring that up. I do write, for the longest time, for 14 years almost with Kim, that was my only gig. I didn't take any other gigs really. But when Kim started to get ill, I started to pick up local work around here with some regional bands. And then Pat and I, the bass player, Pat DeSalvo, started to work much broader with, are you familiar with Sean Chambers at all?
Yeah. I've interviewed him. Great blues player.
Yeah. So we started working with Sean. We did a tour with him. We did a European tour with him. And interesting enough, I'm flying down tomorrow to Florida because we're going to do some gigs this weekend with Sean, and so we're trying to get that thing going. We're trying to. Sean's label mates with us. He's also on Corto Valley, so
Yeah,
we're trying to get a record together and with Corto Valley and see if we can do something with that. So
that'd be great. I'm anxious to hear some new stuff from Sean.
yeah,
He's good stuff. And boy, he seemed to take Kim's passing pretty hard and pretty personal too. That
yeah, yeah. Well, that's actually part of the story. I mean, it's an interesting part of the story with Kim. We met Sean about maybe 3, 4 years back. It was just before COVID. We played a festival in Newton, Iowa, I remember. And Sean was there and he played ahead of us. And he hung out and he wanted to meet Kim and talk with Kim. And the two bands got together. I was having terrible equipment problems that day. So Sean's drummer let me use his some stuff. So the two bands we really hit it off and had a good time that day and we talked for I don't know how long backstage. But Sean and Kim sort of started a relationship where they would call each other once in a while and check in and well when it became evident that uh, Kim could not tour last year, Sean was putting together a European tour, and he asked Pat and I if we could do it, if we were available. And I said, well, we're gonna have to talk with Kim first, and get his blessing. So we talked to Kim, and Kim was all for it. Kim said, yeah, of course, whatever you have to do. And so it was kind of nice because we were all friends, and when we got over there, I don't know. Pat and I would text Kim almost every day, but maybe twice a week. Um, the four of us, Sean and Pat, myself, would get around the phone and we'd WhatsApp Kim and he was wanted to know what was going on, what was happening, where were we, what was going on. He had all kinds of advice and stories. So it was kind of nice to have Kim along with us on that tour. But it was a lot. It was pretty hard to um, I love Sean. Wow, he's fantastic. But for me, and I think it was a shock to look over after 14 years and see somebody else there,
oh, I can
not Kim.
imagine. I can imagine.
So
Well, my interaction with Kim was obviously a lot less than you guys, but first time I interviewed him was by phone, and then the second and last time I interviewed him was via Zoom.
yep,
And what a kind, warm soul
yeah,
Kim was. And you know, as even though he was neck deep in the blues and especially old sounding blues, the stuff I love, how well he adapted to new technology like Zoom calls and things of that nature. I don't know how it was on the musician side of it, but
well,
you
yeah.
know
When I first joined the band, we were burning CDs and sharing CDs with each other for demos. And sometimes he was still mailing them to me. And I mean, we got out of that years ago. I mean, I must have a file with I can't even tell you how many demos are in there that Kim sent to me. Some of them ended up being recordings, like Witchy Feeling and all of those. But some of them are demos that never have seen the light of day. They were just ideas he had, and He was constantly sending Pat and I demos, and in fact, he sent me just before he passed. He sent. I mean, that guy was working right to the right to almost to the last day. He sent me some just before he went into the hospital for the last time. He had sent me, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 demos, And I got to tell you, I just cannot open them. I haven't been able to open them, you know. I will, but eventually, but I just, it was such a shock to lose him. And I mean, you know, I knew he was ill. We knew he was ill, but it still came as a shock. So,
Yeah. When you know it's coming, there's a little bit of us that remain in denial that, you know, Hollywood can happen and there could be some magic
yeah.
serum or something, you know. And
Yeah.
so what in your mind, what is when you tell people about Kim and when you think about Kim, what comes to mind when you think about him? You've had all these years working with him. Uh,
Yeah,
what
well, there's a couple of things. I mean, I'll tell you right now, he was he was tenacious. I mean, he had a great work ethic. He was obviously super creative, and he really was always trying to work the band and stay relevant, you know, within the genre that within blues rock, and also the other thing that comes to mind, really, I got to be honest with you, is uh, you know, this guy could have talked all day long if he wanted to about the things he'd seen and the musicians he's played with and the careers he helped launch and how he was on the cutting edge of rock and roll in the 60s and 70s. And but if you met Kim, you know, on the street, you you just you know, he had this kind of English reserve and humility. You wouldn't know that this guy was this creative giant that's influenced a lot of people. He was just, you know, whatever you were talking to him about, he was like, "Oh, I'm just in here to buy the lawnmower." You know what I mean? You know, whatever it was he was doing. You know, so
Mhm.
it was kind of cool. You know, that part of it for me.
What do you think is the least known thing about him that you would like for people to know about him?
Ooh, the least known. Well, I think that at the end of the day, uh, I would like people to know that he is, when they put the numbers up on the scoreboard, so to speak, I think history is going to, if it's done right, they're going to find out that this guy was as creative, as relevant, as good a player as any of those guys that he was contemporaries with. You know, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, um, Alvin Lee, any of those guys. Sometimes I think Kim's name, it does come up often, but sometimes it doesn't come up. And I often think, you know, something, this guy influenced a ton of people, and what a broad spectrum. Everybody from I mean, look at for example, Government Mule just did a cover of Street Corner Talking on their new record,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, you know, uh, I think the Kentucky Headhunters did one. David Lee Roth has done. Richie Sambora did Hellbound, Train to Nowhere, or one of them. The band Great White, they did a,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I mean, there's been a lot of people that have been influenced by Kim's music and playing. I believe uh, KK Downing from Judas Priest is a big fan, and I think Judas Priest actually, before I was in the band, but back in the '90s at some point, they took him out brought him out for a tour with them, you know, and
Yeah.
so think about that. I mean, you know, somebody who's this blues guy, he's really a blues aficionado. I mean, he had a lot of knowledge about blues and was a pioneer in that British blues rock movement. And now, and all of a sudden, he's reaching over into those hard rock metal guys. You know, I mean, that's quite a leap. You know what I mean? Those
Yep.
So that's how I would like to have people remember Kim. Is I would like him to be in the same conversation as Eric Clapton and those guys that we consider, those of us who know the rock and roll history. I think he's right up there with them. So
I agree. I agree. John Mayall is another one that I
John
would
Mayall.
put Kim as peers with,
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
so tell me about this album. Blues All Around. It's what the band's 42nd album, if I
Yeah,
counted it.
yeah, I think so. I got to be honest with you, I haven't counted them all personally, but some are saying 42, some said 47. But also keep in mind, in fact, with my own history with Kim, the first time I ever met Kim was back in '99. And it was because a mutual friend was helping Kim with a solo project. So if you put
Oh,
all of his solo stuff together, I think he's got over 50 records.
wow. I didn't even
So
think about counting those. Yeah. Gosh,
yeah, yeah.
my goodness. So, and you worked on how many albums total with Kim?
I've done I think 11. I've done everything since Voodoo Moon, which was 2010 or 11, and then I'm including uh, I was on one acoustic record with him, not related to Savoy Brown, and I was also on two live discs and a DVD. So I'm kind of I'm counting those in there, but
Very
all
good.
the studio albums from Voodoo Moon to Blues All Around, I'm on all of those.
So, how was this one different to work on than those other ones you worked on with him?
Yeah, this one was done quite a bit differently. Kim had always recorded live. I think he had done that with all of his bands, versions of Savoy Brown. I personally think that's the right way to go for a blues band, a blues rock band. That's the best avenue. But Kim wasn't feeling 100% on this with this time around. So we have a friend here that owns a studio in this area, Ron Keck, and he's worked with Kim on quite a few things. And Kim called Ron and was talking about this. Hey, how are we going to get, I want to get this thing out, and how are we going to do this? Because I'm not feeling like I can do 10 hours a day in the studio like I've done before. And Ron said, well, why don't you distribute, send me demos, send the guys demos, Pat and myself, and we'll see what we can do. Maybe we can, we'll start working on this. So that's exactly what happened. Kim sent us all demos. We all sort of studied them for a while. And Kim went in first, I believe, on his own, and kind of did some vocal tracks and things like that, just basic. He over the demos, and then Pat and I went in together, and we spent a couple of days in the studio playing over those demos, just getting our basic tracks down. And I think Kim came in the second day. We were there and kind of, over kind of wanted to see what was going on and give us some direction, make sure we were doing the right things. And he had that day, I think he added some more vocals, harmonica, keyboard, some keyboard parts, I remember. And yeah, so we had to kind of build the record from the ground up, and we weren't live like we had always been. But that really had to do with how Kim was feeling, and I think it worked nice. It worked out well, I think it worked beautifully actually, and the reason it was kind of cool was, it was so different, and you kind of get to listen. You learn the songs from a different perspective. I know for me personally, I was all of a sudden hearing percussion parts that I could add, or ideas that came to mind after, while I was doing that process and listening to the demos and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
so Kim, of course, I would have to consult with Kim, if we wanted to add things, but he usually was pretty open to Pat and I bringing our own musical voice into the situation. And I think he was like that with every band that he had.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, he had a way of kind of bringing you into the creative process. So it was
Mhm.
cool. Yeah.
But that jives with the kind soul that I felt like I was seeing when I talked to him the last time. It's one thing to hear it. It's you can actually see it when you're looking at him, through the camera and such. But
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. What I read, I think in the press materials is where I saw it, where because of the illness, he had to change how he played. You had to rely on a lot more, or he did have to rely a lot more on slide work and such. Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
Yeah, well, what was happening was he was starting to feel the effects of chemo, and it was the neuropathy in his fingers was causing him not to be able to feel the ends of his fingers. So
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't, he could. I mean, I saw him playing a few times, and yeah, it's you don't think about it, but this is somebody that's done that for
A
60
lot of years.
years, and he could build the chords, but sometimes, it wasn't quite there. And so he did a couple of things he did was he reverted to some other ideas, being the creative person he was. He started doing some slide, a little more heavy on the slide songs, because that he could do. Um, but um, but the chord structures with the ends of his fingers were getting a little difficult. So, and the other thing he did was, he was messing around with keyboard parts and harmonica and stuff like that. So,
Oh,
uh, yeah,
did he seem pleased with how the slide work turned out? 'Cause I thought it was
yeah,
great. I just was
yeah.
curious how he felt about it when it was all said and done.
He was pretty. Yeah, I think he was very happy with it. I was amazed. He was the kind of guy, I gotta tell you. I would call him and text him during the week, and how are you doing? If I knew he was having a chemo treatment, I would, how are you? Because he would always feel okay after the chemo. It was always a day or two later where he really had a hard time, and
Mhm.
so I would make sure I called him or text him during that time, and usually he would say, ah, everything's copacetic, everything's good, everything's the same. He would never really tell me, he never really enlightened me exactly how much he was going through. I don't think
Yeah.
he wanted to alarm people, but then he would drop something on you like, you know, oh yeah, I can't feel the end of my fingers, you know what I mean? And you go,
Little
well,
detail
that's
there.
pretty bad, you know what I mean?
It's
So
that understated Brit in him, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Gosh.
uh,
Well, just curious on about the album itself. If you were to point to a song on the album and say, "Hey, this is the calling card for the entire album. If you like that song, you're really going to love the rest of the album." Which song would that be?
well, you're putting me in a corner because there's a couple of them.
I'm
There's
not
a
asking you
couple
for
of
your favorite. I'm asking for a
yeah.
calling card.
um, well, okay, so I'm gonna give you California Days Gone By because uh, first of all, I think it was a little bit autobiographical. It's about a rock band hanging out in the '60s, and he drops a bunch of names in there: Janis Joplin, Humble Pie, all these hanging out in California, Sunset Strip. Everybody's a little high, and uh, so uh, and it's kind of rocking, and you can hear him. He's playing well. So uh, the I think that's the one that I would point people to. However, you know, Winning Hand, um, Gypsy Healer. Um, I think some of these songs are reflective for him. Winning Hand, he talks about, he had the winning hand, slipped away kind of thing. So, um, I think maybe it was, you know, he was doing some reflecting. But I do remember with California Days Gone By, I'll tell you a quick story about it was when he first handed us the demo and we got into the studio the first day, Pat and myself and Ron, the engineer, we were talking and we all had a notice that this demo is not quite the lyrics. They're not quite matching up. I mean, the demo was almost had a little country feel to it, and but the lyric was kind of a rock band hanging in the California in the '60s. So the fun part for Pat and I was I do remember Kim saying, "Geez, I hope we can keep this song." So I think it meant something to him. He really was worried that we weren't going to be able to keep it because the first couple of takes just didn't it just didn't groove right. So Kim ended up leaving that afternoon, and what Pat and I did, the three of us, Ron, the sound engineer, uh, Ron just held his finger on the record button, and Pat and I just started playing like grooves. We would do a couple of minutes of this, and then we'd try something else, a couple of minutes of that, but what you're listening to on the recording is the closest we could get to what we were thinking in our mind, uh, what it would have been like hanging out with Savoy Brown, you know what I mean, in the
in the '60s.
California and
Yeah,
Sunset Strip, yeah,
yeah.
So, and then we ran it by Kim the next, I don't know, a couple of days later, and at first he almost didn't notice it at first. He was like, "Oh yeah, that's good," and then he goes, "Oh, that's different. Did you guys do?" I said, "Yeah." So then he played over it with slide and stuff. So I thought that was a great, it was cool because it was cool just how it came together, and we were all pretty creative on it, and it was great.
Which one do you think he would lean to if I was
Mm.
asking him that question?
Ooh.
And that's a tough question for you to have to answer because who knows what he would have thought. But just from your gut feel from working with him on this album, what do you think that would have been?
Mm. I, 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 I'm having a hard time with that one, and I'll tell you why I'm having a hard time because Kim often was. I'll tell you something with him is he had a very good one. He had a great imagination. Number two, he had a great command of the English language. So he would kind of come up with themes, and you can see it even in the old days. I mean, with Hellbound Train, and you think of the the cover of Hellbound Train, or Looking In. It's got this very scary kind of looking little troll guy looking into the skull, and he had a way of he was trying to bring the listener into this creative space, and he was telling a story, and uh, that's why I'm having such a hard time with this question because I think each song is more like turning a page rather than pointing to one song.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
he starts out with Falling Through the Cracks, and he ends it with Falling Through the Cracks. And it's this bluesy instrumental kind of thing, and but you're sandwiched in between. You notice it's very bluesy, almost very traditional blues kind of. You're on the porch with a guitar kind of blues,
Mm-hmm.
and but then in the middle you've got Texas Love, which is kind of like this raunchy blues shuffle, Texas shuffle. Then you've got going down south, which is like almost R&B ish, and California Days is rocking. And so you're getting sandwiched in there. It's almost like you're listening to his life in between, what happened in between those two things, those
Yeah,
two
students. Yeah,
falling through the cracks. So that's why I'm having a hard time with that question. I don't know which one he would lean towards and say, this is definitively what I'm talking about. I think you'd have to draw from a little bit from each one to figure out who Kim is.
yeah.
So,
What's the reaction been so far to the album? That
well, it's
from those
been,
that have been able to hear it. Yeah.
yeah, it's been super good. I am over the moon with it right now. I mean, it was number one on Amazon for quite a while during the pre-sales, and it's now it's kind of going up and down. I think today it was number 7 on Amazon.
Mhm.
Um, but we're also, the people in front of us are, you've got Bonnie Raitt, Buddy Guy, and Bonnie Raitt just won a Grammy, so she may be there for a while. And
Yeah, it's that new up and coming artist that we heard so much about, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And
I would love to have been around that journalist who said that. I just
oh,
just
I,
watch them or them twist, just the
oh man, I heard so many comments about that. And we were number 4 on Billboard this Tuesday. It came out, so the reaction has been super good. The only drawback that I can see right now is that, for example, Witchy Feelin' also did very well on all the streaming services, and we were number 1 on Billboard with that one for a little bit of time. Um, the drawback is we can't support the album with any
yeah.
live shows, so I don't know what kind of how that will play out in the long run for the record, but definitely with Witchy Feelin' and Ain't Done Yet, we were able to get out there and tour. Oh
But
no, tour Ain't Done Yet came out during COVID, so we had a hard time with that one too.
yeah, yeah. Well, and that kind of leads to what I was going to ask you. What's next on all this? I mean, it sounds like there might be some archive stuff that could be mined and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
What's your thoughts on that?
yeah, it's a little early to talk about that. I mean, in some respects, but yeah, it does look like I certainly hope, I like to think that there is another Savoy Brown record in the future, because Kim left an awful lot of material. Some of it is nearly finished. So
Mhm.
there's a lot there that can be mined. A lot of gold that can be mined there. But I will say, I've said this a couple of times in the past, is that if it's going to be done, it's got to be done with the same kind of tenacity and conviction that he would put into it. Because I'll tell you, he would have, he would. We used to rehearse every Thursday and out at his place, and sometimes, I mean, he would sometimes take a song and just dissect it if he didn't feel good about it. And we would have different versions of the same song. He changed the keys, change the lyrics. We'll change the drum pattern. We'll do this. We'll do that. And so, he would definitely uh, think about it, dwell on whatever it was, and try to get the right thing. Whatever that thing was in his mind, he was trying to, get it. So
Well, maybe it can be a deal in the future where you guys get with Sean, and it can be a, it sounds like Sean was almost a kindred spirit with him.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think anybody could ever do Kim justice,
right.
but people could certainly try, and there's a lot that can be said about the respect that would show him, if that was done, and keeping the memory alive.
Right.
That's the big thing, and he
There
certainly.
was some talk some years ago when Kim and Savoy Brown, the band, was approaching 50 years. Um, I do remember there was some talk about there was some people that really wanted to be on a 50th anniversary with him. It never came to fruition. There was lots of problems that they were running into with you know,
Contractual stuff.
yeah, contractual stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
So but um there was quite a few people that wanted to be involved with that, and I was thinking, oh boy, I hope I can be on that. And but that didn't come to fruition. But my point is that maybe something like that could happen eventually, where because I know there'd be people that would want to do something like that.
I think that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. But well, man, this is a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you having me. I love it. Thank you.
Well, when you guys got that album close to coming out, let's
Yeah,
between you and Sean and Pat, we can all get together and just talk about the album that you're putting out there.
I
That would
would
be a lot
love
of fun.
that. I would love that.
Let's
Sean
plan
is
on it.
he's
So
a sweetheart, man. I
he is.
just love working with him, and
Oh, and his wife's a jewel too.
absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
Karen,
So
yeah, she's wonderful. So I'm hoping that we can really do something because I want to see him be successful too. I mean, he's already had his own success, but I I tell you, I think he is someone who's a sleeping giant. He's very creative. He's a hell of a guitar player,
oh yeah.
and he sings well. He's a complete package, and I tell you, he's a hoot to play with. He's another one. I'm so lucky. I mean, to back these guys up. I mean, with Kim, I just had magical nights, and I'm hoping I can do the same with Sean. So
I'm sure you will. And when you talk to him, tell him I said hello. I'll probably
I
send him a
will.
note and ask him if his ears were burning this afternoon.
Yeah, do that, please.
And please give
Yeah.
my regards to Kim's wife. I know that he leaned very heavily on her. I know in my last talk with him, he was, he spoke highly of her. And I know that transition and losing a loved one is very tough. So please give her my regards and that I know that.
Debbie is, I tell you, she is awesome. She's one of these girls that she's done it to me where, uh, you know, she's had to talk us all off a cliff at one time or another, and
Wow.
she's really good she's really good. She would advance all the shows. She would book all the flights. And she would often come to shows and sell merch. And she was in there when we were driving. She's driving with her just like everybody. So she's a trooper, man. So
Well, please give her my regards. And I really do look forward to talking to you again. If you work on something else and you happen to remember me, please shoot me a note and we'll set up something and we'll plug it this way.
oh, thanks so much, Randy. Really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Take care, Garnet. Be safe. Bye-bye.